How does a single envelope delivered on the courthouse steps erase years of pretending? Why did my husband go silent, collecting every private thing I ever joked about, only to hand it all back as evidence against me? The moment I realized my story wasn't mine to control was the moment he calmly made it official, by the law, not by my rules. The envelope arrived on the courthouse steps like a death sentence wrapped in legal paper. I stared at Jonah's calm face as he handed me 3 years of my own words, my own jokes, my own betrayals, all neatly organized with dates and timestamps. How had I never noticed him collecting every cruel thing I'd ever said about him to my friends? "You did this," he said quietly, his voice steady as granite, "the night you stopped being embarrassed by what you were doing to us." I wanted to scream that he was overreacting, that he should just man up like I'd told him 100 times before. But standing there with divorce papers in my hands and photographers capturing my shock, I finally understood. He had manned up, just not the way I'd expected. The restaurant was perfect. Dim lighting, intimate booths, the kind of place that made you feel sophisticated just by walking through the door. Our 3rd wedding anniversary deserved somewhere special, and I'd chosen Meridian specifically because I knew Felix would be there with the donor committee. "This is nice, Lys," Jonah said, adjusting his tie nervously. He always did that when he felt out of place, which was often lately. "Really nice." I smiled and squeezed his hand across the white tablecloth. "You deserve it, baby. We both do." What I didn't say was that I deserved to be seen here, to be admired, to feel like the woman I used to be before marriage and motherhood made me invisible. Felix appeared at our table like he'd been waiting for his cue. "Lysandra, I thought that was you." His smile was warm honey, the kind that made you forget you were supposed to be having dinner with your husband. "And Jonah, right? The math teacher." "That's right," Jonah said, his voice flat. I could feel him withdrawing already, the way he always did when Felix was around. It irritated me more than it should have. "Mind if I say hello properly?" Felix was already leaning down, his hand finding my shoulder as he kissed my cheek. The touch lingered just a second too long, his fingers trailing down my arm as he pulled away. "You look absolutely stunning tonight." I felt my cheeks flush with pleasure. When was the last time Jonah had told me I looked stunning? "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." Felix laughed, that rich sound that always made me feel witty and desirable. "Save me a dance later. I know the DJ here. I could make a request." "We're actually having a quiet dinner," Jonah interrupted, his jaw tight. "Anniversary." Of course, of course." Felix held up his hands in mock surrender, but his eyes never left mine. "I'll let you 2 lovebirds get back to it. But seriously, Lys, that dress is incredible on you." As he walked away, I watched him go, feeling more alive than I had in months. When I turned back to Jonah, his face was stone. "What?" I asked, reaching for my wineglass. "You know what." "No, I really don't. Felix was being nice. He complimented my dress. Since when is that a crime?" Jonah's fingers drummed against the table, a nervous habit I'd grown to hate. "He had his hands all over you, Lys, at our anniversary dinner." I laughed, the sound sharper than I intended. "His hands all over me? Jonah, he touched my shoulder. He gave me a friendly kiss on the cheek. This is how adults interact in the real world." "The real world?" His voice was quiet, dangerous. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you spend all day with teenagers doing algebra. You've forgotten how to talk to actual people." The words came out before I could stop them, cruel and cutting. "Felix works with donors, celebrities, important people. He knows how to make a woman feel appreciated." Jonah flinched like I'd slapped him. "And I don't." I sighed, suddenly exhausted by his insecurity. "You used to. Before you became so, I don't know, boring, jealous. When did you get so jealous, Jonah?" "When my wife started flirting with other men in public." I wasn't flirting. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. I had been flirting, just a little. It felt good to be noticed, to be wanted. And even if I was, so what? It's harmless. It doesn't mean anything. It means something to me. Well, maybe that's your problem. I took a long sip of wine, feeling reckless and justified. Maybe you need to man up and stop being so insecure about everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Jonah stared at me for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost clinical. "You're right," he said. "Maybe I do need to man up." I should have heard the warning in his tone. Should have noticed how he stopped arguing, stopped fighting for us. Instead, I felt victorious. Finally, he was going to stop being such a child about everything. Later that night, as I scrolled through Instagram in bed, I found Felix's post from the restaurant. It was a group photo of the donor committee, but I was visible in the background at our table, laughing at something he'd said. The caption read, "Great evening with amazing people. Some faces light up the whole room." I screenshot it immediately and sent it to Marina with a string of heart-eye emojis. Within minutes, she'd responded, "Girl, he is so into you. That smile." I glanced over at Jonah, who was reading in bed beside me, his face carefully neutral. "Felix posted about tonight," I said casually. He said I lit up the room. Jonah turned a page without looking up. Did he? His lack of reaction should have worried me. Instead, it annoyed me. Here was proof that other men found me attractive, desirable, and my own husband couldn't even be bothered to look jealous anymore. "You're not even going to say anything?" "What would you like me to say, Lys?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. Show some emotion." He finally looked at me then, his dark eyes unreadable. "Would you like me to be upset that another man complimented my wife?" "Maybe. A little. It would show you still care." "I care." He closed his book and set it on the nightstand. "I care more than you know." Something in his voice made me look at him more closely. There was a stillness about him that I hadn't noticed before, like he was holding himself very carefully in check. "Good," I said, settling back against my pillows. "Because I'm not going to apologize for being friendly, or for looking good, or for other people noticing that I look good. I wouldn't expect you to." But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us tonight. Something fundamental and irreversible. When I woke up the next morning, Jonah was already gone, and there was a new folder on his desk labeled Personal 2024. I didn't think much of it at the time. I should have. The non-profit office buzzed with Monday morning energy, but I could feel the undercurrent of gossip the moment I walked in. Nate was waiting by my desk with coffee and a knowing smile. "So," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "Felix's Instagram post is getting some serious attention." I tried to look casual as I opened my laptop. "Is it? 200 likes and counting. Half the comments are asking who the gorgeous woman in the background is." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Marina may have tagged you in her story about it." My heart did a little flip. I pulled up Instagram and sure enough, Marina had reshared Felix's post with the caption, "When your girl is so stunning, she steals the show without even trying. Lysandra living her best life." The responses were immediate and gratifying. Heart emojis, fire emojis, comments about how radiant I looked, how lucky Jonah was. For the first time in months, I felt seen. "The girls in accounting are dying to know if you and Felix are—" Nate made a vague gesture. "Are what?" I asked, though I was enjoying the speculation more than I should have. "You know, there's definitely chemistry there. Everyone can see it." I laughed, feeling giddy. "We work together. We're friends." "Friends who look at each other like that." He pulled up the photo on his phone, zooming in on Felix's face. "Honey, that man is smitten." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Jonah. "Can you pick up Maya from school today? I have a meeting." I frowned. Jonah never had meetings after school. His schedule was rigid, predictable. "What kind of meeting?" I texted back. "Personal business." The response was curt, unlike him. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. "Everything okay?" Nate asked, noticing my expression. "Jonah's being weird, secretive." I shrugged, pushing down the flicker of unease. Probably planning some romantic gesture to make up for being such a stick in the mud at dinner. But as the day went on, that unease grew. Felix stopped by my desk twice, once to discuss the upcoming donor mixer, and once just to chat. Both times I found myself leaning closer than necessary, laughing louder than the jokes warranted. When he complimented my blouse, I felt that same rush of validation I'd felt at the restaurant. "You should wear blue more often," he said, his voice low. "It brings out your eyes." "Thank you," I murmured, very aware that half the office was watching our interaction. After he left, Marina called. "Girl, you need to see what's happening on the Mommy Facebook group." "What do you mean?" "Someone posted Felix's Instagram photo asking if anyone knew who the woman was. Apparently she's relationship goals. And they want to know where you got your dress." I felt a surge of pride mixed with something else, something reckless and intoxicating. "Really? Really? You're famous, babe. Local celebrity status." When I got home that evening, Maya was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with her homework spread out in front of her. "Daddy picked me up," she said without looking up from her math worksheet. "He said you were busy." "I wasn't busy. I just got his text late." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in her familiar little girl scent. "Where is Daddy?" "In his office. He's been in there for hours." I found Jonah at his desk, surrounded by papers and folders. His laptop was open, and I could see what looked like a spreadsheet before he quickly minimized the window. "Hey," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Maya said you picked her up." "You didn't respond to my text." "I was in a meeting. I would have gotten her." He looked at me then, really looked, and I felt exposed under his scrutiny. "How was work?" "Fine. Good, actually. Felix stopped by to discuss the donor mixer." I waited for the familiar flash of jealousy, the tightening around his eyes. Instead, he just nodded. "I'm sure he did." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just that Felix seems to find a lot of reasons to stop by your desk lately." I felt my defenses rising. "He's a colleague, Jonah. We work on events together. It's literally my job to coordinate with him." "Is it your job to flirt with him?" "I don't flirt with him." Jonah turned back to his computer. "If you say so." The dismissal stung worse than an argument would have. "You know what? Maybe I do flirt a little. So what? It's harmless. It makes me feel good about myself. And that's worth humiliating me for." "Humiliating you?" I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. "How exactly am I humiliating you? By being friendly? By letting someone compliment me? By making it obvious that you'd rather be with him than with me?" The accusation hung in the air between us. I wanted to deny it, but the word stuck in my throat. Because wasn't there some truth to it? Didn't I light up when Felix was around in a way I hadn't with Jonah in years? "That's ridiculous," I said finally. "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" He opened a new folder on his desk, one I hadn't seen before. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife is having an emotional affair and justifying it by telling me to man up. It's not an affair. Jesus, Jonah, we haven't even kissed." "Yet." The word hit me like a slap. "You don't trust me." "Should I?" I stared at him, this man I'd married, this father of my child, and felt something crack inside my chest. "I can't believe you just asked me that. I can't believe I had to." That night, I lay in bed scrolling through the comments on Marina's Instagram story, basking in the compliments and speculation. Jonah was asleep beside me, or pretending to be. I took a selfie in the dim light, my hair spread across the pillow, and posted it with the caption, "Some nights you just feel grateful for the people who see your worth." Blessed notch our authenticity. The likes started rolling in immediately. Felix was one of the first to respond with a fire emoji. I fell asleep feeling vindicated, powerful, desired. I didn't notice that Jonah's breathing never settled into the deep rhythm of sleep. I didn't see him slip out of bed at 2 a.m. to add more entries to his growing collection of screenshots and timestamps. I should have been paying attention, but I was too busy enjoying the validation to notice that my husband had stopped fighting for me and started documenting instead. The donor mixer was held at the Skyline rooftop bar, with its panoramic views of the city and its carefully curated atmosphere of sophisticated networking. I'd spent an hour getting ready, choosing a black cocktail dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman I used to be, confident, desirable, worth noticing. Jonah barely glanced up from his laptop when I said goodbye. "Don't wait up," I said, adjusting my earrings in the hallway mirror. Wasn't planning to. His indifference should have hurt, but I was too excited to care. Tonight was about me, about feeling alive and appreciated. The bar was packed with the city's young professionals, all networking and posturing with drinks in hand. I spotted Felix immediately. He had a talent for commanding attention without seeming to try. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Lysandra, wow." He looked me up and down appreciatively. "You're going to steal the show tonight." "That's the plan," I said, accepting the champagne he offered. For the first hour, everything was perfect. Felix introduced me to donors and board members, his hand resting possessively on my lower back. I felt important, valued, like I belonged in this world of influence and money. When someone complimented my work on the spring gala, Felix beamed like he'd personally discovered me. "She's incredibly talented," he told a potential major donor. "One of our most valuable assets." The attention was intoxicating. I found myself leaning into Felix more, laughing louder at his jokes, letting my hand linger on his arm when I spoke. The champagne made everything feel bright and possible. "You're glowing tonight," Felix murmured during a quiet moment at the bar. "Absolutely radiant." "I feel good," I admitted. "Really good. It's been a while since I felt like myself." "This is yourself," he said, his voice low and intimate. "This confident, amazing woman. Don't let anyone dim that light." I knew he was talking about Jonah, and I felt a rush of gratitude that someone finally understood. "Thank you for seeing me." How could I not? The moment stretched between us, charged and dangerous. I was vaguely aware of phones around us, of the constant documentation that came with events like this, but I didn't care. Let people see that I was desired, that I was worth wanting. When Felix suggested we step out onto the balcony for air, I followed without hesitation. The night was warm. The city spread out below us like a glittering promise. We stood close together at the railing, his jacket draped over my shoulders. "This is nice," I said, very aware of how romantic the setting was. "It is." He turned to face me, his expression serious. "Lysandra, I have to ask, are you happy? In your marriage?" The question should have been a red line, a boundary I wouldn't cross. Instead, it felt like permission to voice what I'd been feeling for months. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I used to be, but lately it feels like Jonah and I are just existing, going through the motions." "That's not enough for someone like you." "No," I agreed. "It's not." Felix stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You deserve someone who appreciates what they have." "Felix, I know you're married. I respect that, but I also can't pretend I don't feel something here." His honesty was thrilling and terrifying. "I feel it too." We stood there for a long moment, the space between us crackling with possibility. I knew we were being watched. There were always cameras at these events, always someone ready to capture a moment, but I didn't step away. If anything, I moved closer. "We should go back inside," I said finally, though I made no move to leave. "Should we?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Marina. Girl, you're all over Instagram right now. Warren's power couple. The spell broke. I stepped back, suddenly aware of what we must have looked like. A married woman and her colleague in an intimate moment on a romantic balcony. I gestured vaguely toward the door. Of course. Felix's smile was understanding, but I caught the flash of disappointment in his eyes. But Lysandra, this conversation isn't over. The drive home was a blur of champagne confidence and guilty excitement. I checked Instagram at every red light, watching the photos and videos from the event multiply. There I was, laughing with Felix. There we were on the balcony, his jacket around my shoulders. The comments were a mix of admiration and speculation. Who is this gorgeous woman? Relationship goals. Is she single? Asking for a friend? Power couple vibes. I felt like a celebrity, like someone worth talking about. It was addictive. Jonah was still awake when I got home, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop and a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold hours ago. "How was the mixer?" he asked without looking up. "Good, really good. We raised a lot of money." I kicked off my heels, feeling giddy and reckless. Felix thinks I should take on more donor relations work. I'm sure he does. The dry comment irritated me. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that Felix seems to have a lot of opinions about your career lately. I poured myself a glass of water, trying to sober up enough for this conversation. He believes in me. He sees my potential. And I don't. Do you? The question came out sharper than I intended. When's the last time you told me I was talented, or beautiful, or that you were proud of me? Jonah finally looked up from his laptop, his face carefully blank. I tell you those things. No, you don't. You used to, but you don't anymore. Now you just exist. You go to work, you come home, you grade papers, you go to bed. When did you become so boring, Jonah? He flinched, and I felt a moment of satisfaction. Finally, a reaction. I became boring when my wife started looking for excitement somewhere else. I'm not looking for excitement somewhere else. Aren't you? He turned his laptop screen toward me, showing a video from tonight. It was Felix and me on the balcony, standing close together, his jacket around my shoulders. The caption read, "Love is in the air at tonight's mixer." My stomach dropped. That's not... We were just talking. It doesn't look like just talking. So what if it doesn't? So what if people think Felix and I look good together? Maybe it's a wake-up call. Maybe it's time you started acting like you actually want to be married to me. Jonah stared at me for a long moment. Is that what you want, Lys? For me to fight for you? To make a scene? To get jealous and possessive? Maybe. Yes. Something. Anything other than this passive-aggressive silent treatment. Okay. He closed the laptop and stood up. You want me to man up? You want me to stop being boring and passive? Yes. Consider it done. There was something in his voice that made me look at him more closely. A resolution I hadn't heard before. What does that mean? It means you're right. I have been passive. I've been letting things happen instead of taking control. He picked up his laptop and the folder beside it. That changes now. As he walked past me toward his office, I caught a glimpse of the folder's contents. Printed screenshots, phone records, bank statements. My blood ran cold. Jonah, what is that? He paused in the doorway. Evidence. Evidence of what? Of everything, Lys. Every conversation, every photo, every moment you've chosen him over me. You wanted me to man up. This is me manning up. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the weight of what I'd just seen. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt truly afraid. But I was too proud to knock on that door and ask what he meant. Too stubborn to admit that maybe I'd pushed too far. Instead, I went to bed and posted one more photo from the night. Felix and me raising our champagne glasses in a toast, both of us laughing at some joke I couldn't remember. To new beginnings, I captioned it, and to people who see your worth. I fell asleep to the sound of Jonah's printer running in the office down the hall, churning out page after page of evidence I couldn't even imagine. Maya's 7th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration, but it felt more like a trial. We'd reserved a table at Romano's, the family restaurant where we'd celebrated every milestone for the past 5 years. The whole extended family would be there. My parents, Jonah's Aunt Lydia, even Nate, who'd become like family over the years. I spent an hour getting ready, choosing a red wrap dress that I knew photographed well. The Instagram posts from the donor mixer were still generating comments, and I'd been riding the high of all that attention for days. Felix had been texting me regularly since that night, nothing inappropriate, just friendly check-ins that made me feel seen and appreciated. "You look nice, Mommy," Maya said, watching me apply lipstick in the bathroom mirror. "Thank you, baby." I kissed her forehead, careful not to leave a mark. "Are you excited for your party?" "I guess." She fidgeted with the hem of her new dress. "Is Daddy coming?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course he's coming. Why would you ask that?" "He's been sad lately. Really sad. I drew him a picture to make him feel better, but he just stared at it for a long time and then put it in his folder." A chill ran down my spine. "What folder?" "The one with all the papers. He has lots of folders now. They're all locked up in his desk." Before I could ask more questions, Jonah appeared in the doorway. He looked handsome in his dark suit, but there was something different about his demeanor. A stillness that hadn't been there before. "Ready?" he asked. The drive to the restaurant was tense. Maya chatted about her friends and her presents, but Jonah and I barely spoke. I kept stealing glances at him, trying to read his expression, but his face was a mask. At Romano's, the family was already assembled around a large table decorated with balloons and streamers. My mother, Rosa, stood to hug me, but I caught the worried look she exchanged with my father. "You look beautiful, Misha," she said, but her voice was strained. Aunt Lydia was less diplomatic. Well, the social media star graces us with her presence." I forced a laugh. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all. Just that you've been all over Facebook lately. Very photogenic." The barb hit its mark, but I kept my smile in place. "I've been networking for work. It's part of my job." "Is it part of your job to look like you're on a date with someone who isn't your husband?" The table went quiet. Maya looked around at the adults, sensing the tension but not understanding it. "Lydia," my father warned. "What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. That video from the rooftop bar has been shared 50 times in our neighborhood Facebook group alone." My cheeks burned. "There's nothing inappropriate about that video." "Isn't there?" Lydia pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. It was the video of Felix and me on the balcony, but someone had zoomed in and slowed it down. You could see the way I leaned into him, the intimate way we stood together, the longing in both our faces. "We were just talking," I said weakly. "That's not talking, Lysandra. That's flirting. Public flirting while your husband sits at home with your daughter." "Actually," Nate interjected, "Jonah wasn't at home. I saw him at Starbucks that night, working on his laptop until like midnight." All eyes turned to Jonah, who had been sitting quietly through this entire exchange. "I had some things to organize," he said simply. "What kind of things?" my mother asked. "Personal things." The way he said it made my stomach clench. There was something final about his tone, something that suggested decisions had been made. "Can we please not do this at Maya's birthday party?" I said, trying to regain control of the situation. "Of course," Lydia said. "Let's talk about something else. Like how proud you must be of your wife's new career as an Instagram influencer, Jonah." I wanted to crawl under the table. "I'm not an Instagram influencer." "No? Then what do you call someone who posts thirsty selfies and flirts with men online for attention?" "Lydia, that's enough," my father said firmly. But the damage was done. I could see the judgment in everyone's faces, the way they were looking at me like I was some kind of pariah. Even Nate seemed uncomfortable. I think, Jonah said quietly, that we should order. Maya's been waiting for her birthday dinner. The rest of the meal passed in stilted conversation and forced cheer. Maya opened her presents with enthusiasm, but I could see her glancing between the adults, picking up on the undercurrents of tension. When we got home, I helped Maya get ready for bed, while Jonah disappeared into his office again. As I tucked her in, she looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mummy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" My heart stopped. "What?" "No, baby. Why would you ask that?" "Because that's what happened to Emma's parents. First they stopped talking to each other, and then her daddy moved out." "That's not going to happen to us," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Promise?" I hesitated a moment too long. "I promise we'll always love you, no matter what." It wasn't the promise she'd asked for, and we both knew it. After Maya was asleep, I found Jonah in his office, surrounded by more papers and folders than I'd ever seen. His laptop was open to what looked like a legal website. "What is all this?" I demanded. He looked up at me with tired eyes. "Documentation." "Documentation of what?" "Of our marriage falling apart, of your affair." "I'm not having an affair." "Aren't you?" He picked up a printed screenshot. "This is from 3 days ago. You and Felix at lunch, holding hands across the table." I stared at the image. We had been holding hands just for a moment when he'd been comforting me about the family tension. "That's not what it looks like." "What does it look like, Lise?" "It looks like a friend comforting another friend." "Does it?" He showed me another photo. "What about this one?" It was from yesterday, Felix and me in the office supply closet. We'd been looking for extra folders, but the angle made it look intimate, secretive. "You're having me followed?" "I don't need to have you followed. You document everything yourself. Every lunch, every coffee, every meaningful glance. It's all right there on social media." I sank into the chair across from his desk, suddenly exhausted. "Jonah, I know how this looks, but nothing has happened. We haven't even kissed." "But you want to." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. I did want to kiss Felix. I wanted to feel desired and appreciated and alive. "I want to feel something," I said finally. "I want to feel like someone sees me, values me, thinks I'm worth fighting for. And I don't make you feel that way. Not anymore." "No." He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he'd already known. "Then I guess we have nothing left to fight for." "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" He gestured to the papers around him. "You've made it very clear what you want, Lise. You want excitement. You want passion. You want someone who makes you feel special." "I want my husband to want me." "I do want you. I've always wanted you. But wanting someone who doesn't want you back, that's not love, that's desperation." The words hit me like a physical blow. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done begging for scraps of affection from my own wife. I'm done pretending that what we have is enough when you've made it clear it isn't." "So you're giving up, just like that?" "I'm not giving up, Lise. I'm manning up, like you told me to." He stood and walked to his filing cabinet, pulling out a thick manila envelope. "These are divorce papers. I had them drawn up yesterday." The world tilted on its axis. "You what?" "You heard me. I'm filing for divorce. Custody of Maya, division of assets, the whole thing." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." He handed me the envelope. "You want someone who fights for you? Fight for yourself, because I'm done." I stared at the envelope in my hands, unable to process what was happening. "This is insane. You're throwing away our marriage because of some stupid photos?" "I'm ending our marriage because you already did. I'm just making it official." "Jonah, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can—" "No." His voice was firm, final. "We can't, because you don't want to work it out, Lise. You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to play house with me while you have your emotional affair with Felix." "It's not an affair." "Then end it, Right now. Block his number. Tell him you can't see him anymore. Delete every photo of the two of you from social media. I opened my mouth to agree, but the words stuck in my throat. Because I didn't want to end it. I didn't want to give up the way Felix made me feel. Jonah saw my hesitation and nodded. That's what I thought. This is crazy. You're being crazy. Am I? Or am I finally being smart? He sat back down at his desk, turning his attention back to his laptop. The papers are filed. You'll be served officially tomorrow. I stood there for a long moment, waiting for him to look at me, to take it back, to fight for us. But he didn't. He just kept typing, calm and methodical, like he was grading papers instead of ending our marriage. Finally, I turned and walked out, the envelope clutched in my shaking hands. In the hallway, I could hear Maya crying softly in her room. She'd heard everything. For the first time since this whole thing started, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late now. The papers were filed, the damage was done. And tomorrow, the whole world would know that my perfect life had been nothing but a lie. The process server found me at work on a Tuesday morning, right in the middle of our weekly staff meeting. I was presenting the quarterly fundraising report when Priya, our executive director, was called out to reception. She returned with an apologetic expression and a man in a cheap suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Lysandra Vey? He asked. Every head in the conference room turned toward me. Yes? You've been served. He handed me the envelope and walked out, leaving me standing there with divorce papers in my hands and 12 colleagues staring at me in shocked silence. I think we'll adjourn for today, Priya said gently. The walk back to my desk felt like a death march. I could feel everyone watching, whispering. By the time I sat down, my phone was already buzzing with texts from people who'd heard. Marina. OMG, are you okay? What happened? Nate. Girl, what is going on? People are saying Jonah served you at work. My mother. Miha, call me, please. But it was the text from Felix that made my hand shake. Heard what happened. I'm here if you need anything at all. I stared at his message for a long time, torn between gratitude and guilt. This was all because of him, wasn't it? Because I'd let myself get caught up in his attention, his flattery, his promises that I deserved better. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't fair. Felix hadn't forced me to flirt with him, to post those photos, to hold his hand or stand too close on that balcony. I'd made those choices myself. Liz, Priya appeared at my desk, her expression concerned. Can we talk in my office? The conversation was as humiliating as I'd expected. Priya was kind but firm. The organization couldn't afford to be associated with scandal, especially not when it involved 2 employees. Felix would be transferred to the downtown office, effective immediately. I would be taking a leave of absence until things settled down. I'm sorry, she said as I cleaned out my desk. I know this is hard, but we have to think about our reputation. Reputation. The word followed me home like a curse. My reputation was in ruins, my marriage was over, and my daughter was asking questions I didn't know how to answer. Why did that man come to your work, Mummy? Maya asked that evening as I helped her with homework. Just some paperwork, baby. Daddy said he might have to move out for a while. My heart clenched. He said that? He said sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out, but he promised he'd still see me every day. Of course he had. Even in the middle of destroying our life, Jonah was being thoughtful about Maya's feelings. It made me hate him and love him in equal measure. That night I called Marina, desperate for someone to tell me I wasn't the villain in this story. He's being vindictive, she said immediately. Having you served at work. That's cruel, Lys. He's trying to humiliate you. Maybe I deserve it. Don't say that. You deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who appreciates you. Do I? Because right now it feels like I've destroyed everything good in my life for what? Some attention from a co-worker. Felix isn't just some co-worker, He cares about you. He sees your worth. Does he? Or does he just like the thrill of being with a married woman? Marina was quiet for a moment. Have you talked to him since this happened? He texted, offered to be there for me. See? That's real caring, Lys. When's the last time Jonah offered to be there for you? But I was starting to wonder if Jonah had been there all along, and I'd just been too busy looking elsewhere to notice. The next few days blurred together in a haze of legal consultations and social media damage control. The divorce papers were brutal in their thoroughness. Jonah wanted full custody of Maya, citing my emotional affair and increasingly erratic behavior as evidence that I was an unfit mother. The worst part was that he had evidence to back up every claim. Screenshots of my texts with Felix, photos of us together, bank records showing expensive lunches and shopping trips I'd justified as networking. Even Maya's drawing from weeks ago, the one where she'd drawn Sad Daddy while I was out with Felix. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Catherine Mills, laid it out plainly. Your husband has been building this case for months. Every photo you posted, every public interaction with Mr. Marin, every time you chose social media validation over family time, he documented it all. That's insane. Who does that? Someone who's been pushed to their breaking point, she said bluntly. Someone who tried to save their marriage and realized their spouse was more interested in Instagram likes than their family. The truth of it hit me like a slap. So, what are my options? Fight it and lose publicly, or negotiate a settlement that gives you reasonable visitation and a chance to rebuild your reputation. I want to fight. With what? He has financial records, social media posts, witness statements from your own family members. Your aunt-in-law gave a statement about your behavior at your daughter's birthday party. I felt the walls closing in. This can't be legal, using social media posts as evidence. It's perfectly legal, and increasingly common. You put your life online, Mrs. Vey. Your husband just organized it into a timeline. That evening, I sat in my empty apartment. Jonah had moved out the day before, taking Maya with him temporarily, and scrolled through months of my own posts. Seeing them all together, arranged chronologically, was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Here I was at the anniversary dinner, glowing with Felix's attention, while Jonah sat ignored in the background. Here was the rooftop video, intimate and romantic. Here were dozens of photos of Felix and me at lunches, coffee dates, work events, always touching, always laughing, always looking like more than colleagues, and scattered throughout with a few photos of my actual family. Maya's birthday party, where I looked distracted and annoyed, a family dinner where I was clearly checking my phone instead of engaging. Even our anniversary photo looked forced, compared to the natural joy in my face when I was with Felix. When had I become this person? When had I started caring more about online validation than my own daughter's happiness? My phone buzzed with a text from Felix. Hey, beautiful. I know things are crazy right now, but I'm here for you, whatever you need. I stared at the message for a long time. Here was my chance to run toward the excitement I'd been craving, to embrace the passion that had cost me everything. Instead, I deleted the message without responding. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But it was too late. The damage was done, the papers were filed, and tomorrow I would have to face the consequences of every choice I'd made. Jonah had manned up, all right. He'd manned up and shown me exactly what I'd thrown away. The courthouse steps were cold beneath my feet as I waited for Felix. We'd planned to meet for coffee after my lawyer's appointment, and I'd thought it would be poetic to take a selfie here. Me, strong and independent, moving forward with my life. I was checking my makeup in my phone's camera when I saw Jonah walking toward me, a manila folder in his hand and an expression I'd never seen before. Not angry, not hurt, just resolved. Lys, he said simply. Jonah. I slipped my phone into my purse, suddenly self-conscious. What are you doing here? Making sure you got these. He handed me the folder. Your copy of the final documentation. I opened it with trembling fingers and felt the world shift beneath me. It wasn't just divorce papers. It was 3 years of my life, organized and catalogued with terrifying precision. Screenshots of every text I'd sent Marina about Felix, complaining about Jonah, calling him boring and jealous. Photos I'd forgotten I'd posted, showing me gazing at Felix with obvious longing. Bank records of every lunch, every shopping trip, every moment I'd chosen my own desires over my family's needs. But it was the personal things that destroyed me. Maya's drawings, showing our family getting smaller and sadder over time. A recording of the conversation from her birthday party, where I'd dismissed Jonah's feelings and called him passive. Even my own words, captured in screenshots from social media. Some people just don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. You recorded our private conversations, I whispered. I documented my marriage falling apart, he corrected. Every cruel thing you said about me to your friends, every time you chose Felix over our family, every moment you made it clear that I wasn't enough for you. I flipped through page after page of evidence, seeing my betrayal laid out in black and white. This is vindictive, Jonah. This is cruel. Is it, or is it just the truth? You were supposed to fight for me. You were supposed to try to save our marriage. I did try, Jonah said, showing my own text mocking therapy like his self-esteem was the problem. I went cold seeing my words in his hand. He told me I'd turned him into a punchline, friends, co-workers, even family, while I leaned into an emotional affair and called it frustration. I called his move revenge. He called it accountability, and his face didn't soften when I cried. Then he slid out custody papers. Primary custody of Maya, protection from my chaos. He showed my wine bar post without a ring and said Maya had seen it. Felix appeared concerned. I walked past him, finally understanding.